Hello human beings, Power Gamer here. And I met this guy who seemed like a really cool dude, but the second time I met him, he just kicked me. Has that ever happened before?
Super Mario Bros. The Lost Levels, one of the best examples of how to make a sequel that winds up not being the sequel. I'm sure most people know the story behind this game, but for those of you that don't, I'll make it quick. After the success of the original Super Mario Bros., the developers began to create a new version of the game to be released in arcades. They experimented with more challenging level design, and they thought it would make for an interesting game on its own. Directed by Shigeru Miyamoto and Takashi Tezuka, the game was designed for players who had mastered the original game and needed something more challenging. The game was released for the Famicom Disk System on June 3rd, 1986. And it sold really well. When it came time to release the game internationally, though, Nintendo of America considered it to be too difficult for most people. So instead of releasing it, Nintendo took a completely different game called Doki Doki Panic and changed that to be Super Mario Bros. 2. That version would later be released in Japan as Mario 2 USA, while the original would be released outside of Japan as Mario The Lost Levels. The rest of the world wouldn't see The Lost Levels until it was remastered for the Super Mario All-Stars collection released for the SNES in 1993.
So I'm gonna play it today to see if it should have left Japan earlier or never. Now, since it never got a physical release in North America, I'll be playing it via the Nintendo Switch Online service, since that's easier than tracking down a Japanese copy.
The story of this game is that Peach has once again been kidnapped by Bowser, and Mario and Luigi must save her. The story wasn't the only thing reused from the first game, the music is exactly the same as well, and the graphics are pretty much the same thing. The only difference is that the backgrounds are a bit more detailed, and the mushrooms now have little eyes on them. The game runs a bit better than the original, but I still ran into the occasional sprite flickering or lag. At its core, the gameplay is still the same: run, jump, and avoid enemies. But like I said before, this game cranked up the difficulty tenfold. If the fact that the game never left Japan wasn't an indicator of how hard it is, the fact that there's an enemy right on the title screen should be. The game's difficulty pretty much picks up right where the first one left off, and it just keeps going. The level designs are significantly harder than the originals were. More enemies, larger jumps, difficult maneuvers, more bottomless pits. Everything you could imagine making the game harder is here in boatloads. If you thought the first Mario game could be difficult, it is nothing compared to this. You need to bring your A game to this, and if you're not ready, you won't make it far at all. It's do or die, and more often than not, it's the latter. And unfortunately, this game controls exactly like the first game, so that means it's still a bit awkward and slippery. Why did I fall off? I wasn't moving. All the enemies from the first game are back. Goombas, Koopas, Lakitus, Bullet Bills, Cheep Cheeps, Bloopers, and Hammer Brothers. There is one new enemy though, the red piranha plant. They're like the green ones, only they're more aggressive and pop up even when you stand next to them. The level themes are mostly the same, like overworld, underground, water, and castle, but there are a few new ones like night themes and a more detailed sky. There's once again 8 worlds with 4 levels each, and you beat them when you touch the flagpole at the end. The game also reuses a lot of level ideas, like having to take a specific path, or Cheep Cheeps flying from below. Great! But the levels aren't as simple as before. A lot of them you just have to move forward and go in the right pipe, but there are also plenty of moments where it looks like you reached a dead end. That's because you have to hit some secret blocks that don't appear until you hit them. These were in the first game, but I didn't feel the need to mention them because they didn't affect the game that much. Another thing I didn't mention about the first game is that you can't go backwards. Once the screen scrolls right, it's locked and you can't move to the left. Again, last time this wasn't a big deal, but in this game you could unintentionally strand yourself, since you could either miss a platform that you now can't reach, or you need a certain amount of speed to jump across a gap, and now you can't gain it because you don't have enough room.
I know I keep making comparisons to the first game, but it's pretty much the exact same thing, only much harder. This feels more like a fan-made ROM hack than an official sequel.
There is one thing this game does better than the first one though, and that's game overs. You still start with only 3 lives, but when you lose them all, you don't have to start the whole game over from the beginning. It only sends you back to the start of the world you're in, so it's basically the same thing as using the continue code in the first game. I told you that wasn't cheap. It doesn't really matter to me though, since the Switch Online service has the same benefits as the Mega Man Legacy Collection, save states, and the rewind feature.
I don't care. If it wasn't for these, I would be losing my mind right now. This doesn't make the game easier, it just makes it faster.
The game's other big innovation, though, is that it lets you play as Luigi with only one player, and unlike the first game, he actually plays differently. Luigi can jump higher than Mario, but he has worse traction, so he slides around a lot. I do not recommend picking Luigi. The power-ups also return, and they act exactly the same. Sadly, you won't get the Fire Flower as much, because not only are power-ups less common, but since the levels are even harder, you're more likely to get hit. And if you see a Fire Flower, but take a hit before you grab it, you don't get the fireball, so it basically turns into a mushroom. There are no new power-ups, instead there's a new obstacle to avoid, the poison mushroom. You take damage if you touch it, so it's the exact opposite of a normal mushroom. But the worst new additions to this game are the wind and the super springs. Springs were in the last game, but these ones send you flying off screen and you have no idea where you are and by extension where you're gonna land. You just have to get lucky. The wind comes out of nowhere and can push you off the edge or send you flying into an enemy or pit. There are so many leaps of faith in this game, it's ridiculous. This game is just one hazard after another, and almost all of them kill you instantly. Gaps that require full force to jump across, enemies that barely give you space to jump on them, super strict button timing and momentum use, and way too many jumps where you only have one shot.
And you wonder why I'm using save states.
The warp zones also make a return, but that's absolutely cheating, so I'm not using them. Even if I was, you need to be careful because some of them send you backwards instead of forwards, because why the hell not? I'll admit this game has a couple of level designs that are kinda neat, like having to ride on a platform across the level or using enemies to boost yourself up. You just have to get through a bunch of garbage in order to find them. Once again, every fourth level is a castle, and they're harder than most of the other ones. Taking specific paths, avoiding fireballs and lava, and little to no power-ups. These levels have easily the cheapest level design in the game. Look at this, I barely have any room to make it up there. And what was that? I was holding right! You have to make most of these jumps perfectly or else it doesn't count. And the secret blocks are not appreciated. The castles all end with Bowser fights and they're exactly the same as the last game. Get past him and use the axe only to find a toad. If you say that one more time, I'm going to make you into mushroom soup. The only reason I'm not going into rage mode is because of the save slots and rewind. If it wasn't for those, I would be screaming my head off right now because so many of these obstacles are just instant death. And extra lives are even more uncommon than they were in the first game. Starting each world over and over again because of a few mistakes is not my idea of fun. World 8 is once again the worst part of the game. 8-1 has this jump that took me ages to get right. 8-2 has the unholy trio of Wind, Springs, and Hammer Brothers. And 8-3 has even more Hammer Brothers, plus this part where you have to hit secret blocks and jump perfectly onto the elevator. Get up there. Get up there. Just get up there already! Only one level left. 8-4. Really annoying jumps, fireballs, fire bars, lava, random water areas, pipes that send you backwards in the level. This place has it all. Get past this fake Bowser and finally defeat the real Bowser only to find a door. Okay, Peach is inside. Good. Oh my god! That is one of the worst translations I have ever seen! This wasn't translated for the original NES, why is it so bad? Oh my god, that is gold. Oh, that's gold. You actually unlock an extra world which has these cool colors, and if you beat it without dying, you start the world over. Apparently, there are more bonus worlds you can unlock by beating the game multiple times. No, thank you!
Game conquered. Mario The Lost Levels is not a very good game. Even if you take the extreme difficulty out of it, it doesn't really do anything to stand out on its own. It feels more like an expansion than a full-on sequel, which makes sense given how it was originally developed. It's pretty much just the first game, but harder and with a few extra things added, and if you really want hard Mario levels, you're probably better off just getting Mario Maker. While the game is mostly functional, there's no real reason to play it. You can easily afford to skip it. Oh, that's why that guy kicked me.